The history of the cafe racer build influence. There have been few movements as influential and powerful as the cafe racer. These motorcycles first started appearing in 50s England, though the culture soon thrived all over the world, too. What's striking about the cafe racer motorcycles is that most non-bikers have probably not heard of them. Despite this, their impact was incredibly powerful, though it was fairly short-lived. However, the cafe racer is seeing something of a comeback on the streets. As such, this article will serve as a guide to cafe racers both then and now. The history of the original cafe racers. Cafe racers came to popularity in the 1950s on the streets of England. It was a subculture born out of the rock and roll music scene. Back then, traditional rock and roll music was very fast-paced and incredibly raw. Those that loved the music saw it become a huge influence on their lives, particularly in what they drove. Soon, rockers wanted something that reflected the music they listened to, something fast, raw, and aggressive. Consequently, the first cafe racers were born. London's Ace Cafe. When you look at the history of cafe racers, you can pinpoint certain places that were iconic in the formation of the movement. On the North Circular Road in London, there was an establishment called the Ace Cafe. It opened in 1938 and was a classic truck stop cafe that soon became one of the biggest and most famous locations for bikers to meet in the whole of England. Before the rockers and their cafe racers came to town, Ace Cafe was seen as something of a revolutionary cafe with a difficult past. The original cafe was damaged during World War II and reopened in 1949. It had service pumps, the repair shop, and even somewhere for people to clean their vehicles. The Turned Up Boys. If you've not heard of cafe racers, then you may have heard of the Turned Up Boys. This was another nickname given to the teenagers that raced around on the custom-made motorcycles. As mentioned, these kids were dead set on making their bikes go as fast as possible. They wanted to replicate what they'd seen from some of the legendary racers of that time. As a result, they became obsessed with doing the ton, the phrase they used that meant hitting 100 miles per hour on their bikes. The return of cafe racer. The cafe racing scene came to an end in the late 60s, but its impact lived on. The things these Turned Up Boys did to their bikes helped influence modern motorcycle designs. Fast forward to today and the memory of cafe racers still lingers on. So much so that the bikes are starting to make a fashionable comeback. Nowadays, retro things are becoming incredibly desirable and popular. People love looking backward and seeing all the cool things that used to be around in the old days. When the Ace Cafe reopened, it plucked at people's nostalgic heartstrings and, once again, became something of a catalyst for the cafe racer movement. Off-the-shelf cafe racers. What is an off-the-shelf cafe racer? In short, it's a cafe racer that's been specifically designed by a manufacturer and released to the public as such. This differs from how classic cafe racers are built, as their whole premise is formed on taking existing bikes and customizing them. However, these racers are still very popular, and some of the biggest manufacturers are getting involved. To round off this piece, we'll have a look at two of the most popular off-the-shelf cafe racers around today. Bonneville Triumph THRUXTON. Back in the day, the Thruxton was a bike of choice for many cafe racers. They'd take this street bike, strip it down, and turn it into an aggressive little machine with tons of power. Nowadays, Triumph has brought the Thruxton back to life as a modern classic cafe racer. It's kitted out with incredible power, an imposing style, classic looks, and modern capabilities. Essentially, it takes all that's good about the classic cafe racer, with a few modern twists here and there, such as the multiple riding modes and contemporary safety features. BMW R90 Racer. BMW 90 is their best effort at replicating the classic cafe racer motorcycle. It ticks all the boxes in what you'd expect to find from one of these bikes. It has the retro style, the super fast engine. You won't struggle to hit the ton with this machine. It maxes out at a huge 135 mph. Final thoughts and the future of cafe racers. Cafe racer motorcycles were born out of a rich rock and roll culture in England during the 50s and 60s. Back then, these bikes were more of a symbol of the lifestyle than anything else. Now, they've become popular again thanks to their retro looks and what they represent in the history of motorcycles. What does the future hold for cafe racers? It seems like they'll stay popular for as long as retro things are still desirable. Also, we should see more and more off-the-shelf models as companies try and cash in on this trend while it lasts. No matter what, one thing will always remain: the Cafe Racer motorcycle is iconic and will light on in memory forever. Final thoughts.